From the belly of the Beast Coast, Glastonbury, Connecticut, this is the Cultra Trail Running Podcast. We talk about all the fun shit that happens on the trails that most normal people don't care about. The language we use is fucking explicit and raw like the trails we run on. So don't listen with your kids! Cultra is brought to you by our patrons and supporters, and we are 112% listener supported, and support is good.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Cultra Trail Running Podcast. I'm your host, Art Byram, and I am joined today by a member of the Cultra crew, Fred Marolo.
I'm here.
All right, Fred. How you doing, Fred?
I'm doing all right.
All right. Good.
I was up in Vermont over the weekend and for a nice fall weekend, and it was 80 degrees. So like it wasn't really a fall weekend.
Wow.
It was kind of a summer-ish weekend.
Yeah. That's getting pretty warm there.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I know. I as we talked about, I guess the last couple episodes, we've been focusing on the White Mountains. So things are changing up there, or probably already past peak.
So. Yeah, there you go.
So also tonight, we have a very special guest joining us. His book is ranked as the #1 seller in extreme sports. Jared Beasley, who is the author of The Endurance Artist, Lazarus Lake, the Barkley, and A Race with No End. So welcome, Jared.
Thank you guys so much for having me on. Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you here. I guess before we get into the book, I always like to find out a little bit about our guests, and kind of, before we talk about the race or whatever, I'd like to find out a little bit more about you. So where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Decatur, Alabama, which is just on the other side of the river from Huntsville, on the north side of Alabama. Mm-hmm. My father's family was from Limestone County, which is right up against Tennessee, and then my mother was from Lawrence County, which was on the south side of the river, just a little bit west of the town that I grew up in, Decatur, and they both came to Decatur for jobs. So I grew up never really fitting in there. My family, both the sides there, were from really country areas, and all of the people that were flocking to Decatur at that time were from up north or other parts of the country to work on the space program in Huntsville, and also some car plants that they had, things like that. So wow. I grew up there. I left when I was 24 after graduating from the University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa, came to Manhattan.
Very good. Very good. And so why did you go to Manhattan then?
I was in theater. I was an actor. That was the place to be. Theater was my life.
Awesome. Huh. So when did you start theater then? How old were you when you started?
When I was cast in a play in college.
Oh, okay. So before that, in grammar school, or you had never had any experience with that?
No, like I mentioned, I was from North Alabama, which is pretty backwoods. We had some theater, but I wasn't exposed to it. And I was a real big film buff. So film was my jam. Mm-hmm. And it kind of made sense. I did, to go into theater, but I did go through a small phase of physics, astronomy, where I thought I wanted to do that, mainly because I loved this film called Real Genius with Val Kilmer. And I wanted to do that. I tried that, did not work. Theater was for me. I did maybe 27 plays in the time that I was at the university. I did some professional theater, and you've got to go to New York. You got to go to Manhattan. And as someone whose entire family lives within a 30-mile radius and has been that way for the last 150 years, it was a major thing for me to leave and to come to New York.
Oh my God. It's like, why don't you just go move in with Satan? Right. I mean, because for most people, going to Manhattan is when I tell people who aren't from Manhattan that, so I worked there for 13 years, they're like, oh my God, they wonder how you could deal with all of the extreme front end, the violence, and all the other stuff that doesn't really exist that much there.
The neighborhoods that the police are afraid to go to, right? And the other neighborhoods with Sharia law. And and all, all manner of things, that the rumors about New York.
Oh
Right?
yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy, right? Hell's
yeah.
Kitchen. I mean, gosh.
Well, that's where I was at in the beginning, was Hell's Kitchen.
There you
A
go.
friend of a friend of a friend of a friend put us up in a place on 43rd and 9th.
Yeah.
And I'd heard all this stuff about Hell's Kitchen, but as you're alluding to, it was the reality of Manhattan was so very different,
Mm.
and it turned out to be just phenomenal. I loved living in Manhattan. I only left Manhattan in 2015 because I got married, and
Hmm.
the 80 square foot box, literally the 80 square foot room I had on 79th and West End, would no longer cut it.
Wow. So what year did you move to Manhattan then?
Oh, 1999, January.
Oh, so that was
Yeah.
the city was in
Yeah.
top shape right then. I was working there then. So
Yeah.
it had that going for it. It was, it was no, it
Yeah.
was a nice place. It was a nice, at that point, Giuliani had been in and cleaned everything up. Everybody was buying computers. I thought that at Y2K that, the whole world was going to shut down, and it didn't.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. I
all that.
was in Central Park when
Oh,
when
cool.
it flipped over to 2000. I was in Central Park with a buddy,
Yeah. Wow. So
and I saw the runners come. If New Yorkers know that the NYR does that midnight run on New Year's Eve, and I
sure.
saw those runners go by, and I said, "Man, I want to do that one day." And I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, were you doing any running then, or not at all, or?
Not at all.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Zero.
Gotcha. But now, and I want to talk a little bit more about the theater. So, what sort of roles did you play, and what sort, were you playing the kind of roles that you liked, or, how did you find those
Yeah.
roles? Like,
Yeah, I did. I did mainly straight plays, meaning non-musical
uh-huh.
plays. I did a few musicals
Hmm.
when, I did a professional musical, but that I was doing that literally because I needed the money, one, and two, they didn't have anybody else, so I was getting cast. If
Gotcha.
it was up here in New York, I would never be considered for a musical. Not a triple threat.
Hmm.
Don't dance really. Don't sing very well. So I was a dramatic actor. I did some improv. I did Angels in America, which I was really proud of. That was the first time it had ever been done in Alabama.
Hmm.
So playing a Mormon individual going through a huge crisis in his life was a lot of fun.
Mm.
But I enjoyed it all. I really never found myself complaining about roles, because there's this old adage that there are no small parts, there are only small actors.
Sure,
And
sure.
if you so I was never going to complain, and still can't. Yeah.
Mm. Very good, very good. Yeah, that's got to be it's got to be a cool thing to go, after, so after being in the South and then going to Manhattan, like that's some cultural diversity there, right? I mean,
Oh yeah.
you must bring such an opinion to, New Yorkers must just, I find those things tend to help people a lot. Like if you had something that was different and unique about you in New York, and you could carry it, it was a great thing. It gave you some personality there, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I don't know if how that worked for me. I've never really
Hmm.
looked back on it too much.
Hmm.
I know that I wasn't carrying it on my sleeve. I was not wanting to do that. I didn't want to just,
Okay.
hey, yeah, I'm from Alabama, roll tide. I'm, loving the city.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
that
didn't want
that
to be that guy.
Okay, that's fair enough too. I mean, you don't want to get mugged. I mean, because you can get mugged there, you know. But okay, that's pretty cool. Now, did you, or are you a runner now?
Yeah. Oh, very
Okay,
much.
okay,
Yes, he
good.
is. I'm looking
Yes.
him up on Ultra Sign Up right now.
Okay, I apologize. I should have done that, but I always ask the questions anyway with this. So let's talk about your running then. When did you start running, and why?
Well, because of the move, really. As
Mm,
much as I loved Manhattan, it was so unbelievably different.
mm,
Where I came from, nature was the rule and buildings were the exception. Where I was living, buildings and concrete were the rule and nature was the exception. I'll never forget going to Bryant Park around lunchtime and seeing thousands of people huddled around a patch of grass. I had to call my family. I said, you will never believe this. There are people here eating their lunch and staring at a patch of grass that no one is allowed to walk on. But so, yeah, I was going through a lot of panic attacks, anxiety, all kinds of issues after 9/11 happened. So I had worked in the tower, in Tower One, for a Japanese bank as a temp. I wasn't there when it happened, but gosh, anybody that was around at that time, and my life got pretty small after 9/11. I found myself making excuses not to go out, not to do things, not to engage. And then in 2003, this really unusual man moved next door to me in the 80 square foot room, right, literally attached to mine. All we had was this divider between our rooms. We could hear each other every night. You know, it was very, very close quarters. And he was not the kind of guy that you would normally think to open up to. He smelled like booze and sweat. He had gold skulls for teeth. Not kidding. We'll send you pictures. But I did open up to him. There was something raw and honest about him. He had an answer for every problem in the world, I found. Run. He told me to meet him the next day at noon in front of the building. I did. We went to a small track on 73rd by the river. He ran forever. I couldn't do a mile. I stopped and sat on these concrete steps that they have there, and you can look out over the Hudson. It's surrounded by these crabapple trees, and it's just a wonderful little escape. You don't really feel like you're in the middle of Manhattan when you're there. And I watched him run and run, and we repeated this day after day. Running became a part of my life. I thought that he was on to something. It didn't solve all my problems, but I didn't get any worse. I started feeling better. I started having more energy. I had to run after that. Yeah, I was addicted. And it was a long time before the running and the writing then mixed in together. So this guy was a really elusive, enigmatic character. I didn't even know his last name. I just called him the pirate because he looked like a pirate. Then one day, this is in 2014, like 11 years later, I was searching online for these 6-day races that he had told me about. It was one of the most outlandish things he had mentioned. I find a Sri Chinmoy website. I go to that. I'm looking at 6-day races back in the 80s. There's his picture. There's his name, first, last name. I copy it, paste it, search, all of these runs that he had done. It blew my mind. 1,000-mile races, 1,300-mile races, a run across America in 1992. That was the first chasm that opened up in the world of running for me, where there's all these different levels of distance, difficulty, imagination connected to running. For me, I was an urban runner, 3 miles a day, 5 or 10 on the weekends. I went and did a marathon or two, but nothing other than that. My idea of a trail race was literally, I kid you not, the bridle path in Central Park. I thought that's what a trail race was. I was not reading running magazines. I was not reading trail running magazines. I was a guy that was living in the city, working in the city. The only thing I knew of running was through him.
Yeah, I mean, the running culture in Central Park certainly is just, it's insane. I mean, I remember running there for the first time after I was probably running for probably 4 or 5 years, and there were more people there on like a Tuesday than I saw at the largest races that I ran, and even at 5 o'clock in the morning, doing a loop of the park was just like, it was crazy, a crazy spot to find great runners. So I have a feeling that the story deepens with your neighbor, right? And because I think I'm kind of onto you here, so I'll let you continue with your story here. This is
this is something I've talked about before because it led to my first book, which was In Search of Al Howie.
Mm-hmm.
Al Howie was an old friend of my neighbor Emil, and they hadn't been in touch for over a decade, maybe longer. Emil wanted me to see if I could find him. He thought that if I should write about anybody, it should be Al Howie.
Mm.
I found him in a care home up in British Columbia. His record of the things that he had done compared to what Emil had done, which had already blown my mind, there was another huge chasm.
Mm.
So Emil had done all of these things, right? Amazing runs I told you about. I don't think I mentioned the 1,000-mile run around Texas where everybody quit but him. He did amazing things. Al Howie, he won them.
Mm.
He had a winning percentage that was unbelievable. And his personality was something that was mythical that I'd heard from others that I interviewed around him that I really wanted to get a hold of. But on phone calls and in dealing with him, there was a huge disconnect. He was in such bad shape.
Mm.
So there was a real struggle there with that.
So he was so he wasn't your typical health runner, right? I mean, to
No.
put it mildly, right? He was kind of like the polar opposite of that, right?
No, in 1991, he ran over 5,300 miles in the course of 3 to 4 months.
Mm.
He ran across Canada in a world record time of 72 days, 10 hours. He did 63 miles a day. 2 weeks after finishing that, he entered a 1,300-mile race in Queens, New York, won that, broke the world record, his own, doing that in 16 days.
Mm.
He was a journey runner at heart.
Mm-hmm.
He got started running from city to city. He would run hundreds of miles to marathons, show up, win them, run back. And he ran on beer. He was Scottish. And as it turned out, he was also on the run literally from Interpol, from Scotland. So
Gotcha. Yeah.
there was a lot to his story to unpack. And there's a second edition of that book coming out next year, bought by the publisher that I have now. So reworking some elements of that old story, it's funny to think about. That came out in 2019.
Gotcha. And so again, that book is called In Search of Al Howie.
Yeah.
And it's a good read. He very interesting character, Al Howie. Yeah.
Hmm.
His name's not even Al, right? It was like
That's right. Yeah,
Wow.
his name was Arthur John. His sister knew him as AJ. I found German names that he was running under in Canada when he was still being, sought after by Interpol.
Huh. That sounds like a cool book, mixing lots of genres there, between like a spy novel and an ultra running, right? I mean, and beer.
Yeah. Yeah.
A legendary
I was
running rogue though, because like as Jared said, like in the book, you'd see he would like want to enter like a marathon in Toronto or something, and he'd just run there, and it'd be like 150 miles to get to the marathon. Then he'd run the marathon and win it, and then run home.
There are characters like that in our sport, and it's amazing. Like I know, like people who just have whatever it is kind of drives them to do things like that, where they're like skydiving and this thing of running to a race and then racing the race, doing pretty well in it, and then running home, and him running across the country is taking that to a new level. But it's an interesting theme in ultra runners. I think that we all know, some people who do that to some extent, right? Who just seem to, I don't know. It's like you wonder whether they're the old question is, are they running from something? And what are the demons there that make somebody, or is that, I mean, for him, most of the time when there's alcohol abuse, it's generally not a healthy thing. I mean, was he like tormented, do you feel? Or
I think there's another element that was really in play in the 80s that we don't see today.
Mm-hmm.
In the multi-day scene back then, there were a lot of people, and this is what I found my neighbor Emil had in common with Al Howie, why they bonded so well. They were running as a lifestyle. What I mean by that is they were running multi-day races to feed themselves. They were constantly broke, and they were both very good at sponging off of people, sponging off of race directors, sponging off of friends, neighbors. Emil was sponging off of me. I was very aware of that. But I thought I was getting a good story for buying all this food, for him. I'd pay to hear what he had to say about all of his journeys, which were really amazing, not really in the book. For Howie, he was already in a certain state, but I found out that he had been the same way. He would eat you out of house and home. So these guys, if they're running a 1,300-mile race, you're talking about being out there for 2.5, 3 weeks. Shrishing Moist, they're feeding you good food, prepared food. You got a place to sleep. If you can find a way to tour around the country and get around certain places, that you could sketch together a lifestyle.
It kind of sounds like the age of pedestrianism in a sense.
Yeah.
I mean, there were people who would, or the Bunyan Derbies, where, they started that out with no idea on how they were going to financially make it work. And it probably wasn't going to work, but they found a way to basically, make it entertainment. I mean, this is a different scale, but interesting. Wow.
Yeah. Definitely the 80s were a second golden age of the multi-day running events, like the pedestrians had been in the 19th century.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. So that's interesting that you kind of but you had never heard of any of of ultra running really before you had your neighbor, right? Is that
right?
Yeah.
That was in 2014. It took me 5 years to write that book and get it published, and all of my research learning was going into that end of multi-days and the sport of ultra running. So it was quite a shock when I started to cover Lazarus Lake, people like that, when I started to write for Ultra Running Magazine, the New York Times, the Guardian, covering broader, usually trail events now. It was something I had to catch up on. I had to learn. And I'll never forget running my first trail race. Like I mentioned before, I had in my mind the bridle path in Central Park. I went to run a 9-mile race in the Berkshires, and that thing absolutely kicked my ass.
Now, do you remember where it was in the Berkshires?
You bet. I could go there, yes, today. Actually, it's funny. I'm going to go there this Saturday to do an event.
Oh, okay.
It was right outside of Lenox.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I just want to so yeah, we have quite a few listeners in the Shires. So
Please come see me. We will be at, I don't know when this comes out, but
what's the name of the race?
Oh, it was the Memorial Day races. That was back in 2014 and 15. I did it again. It went over Olivia's, which is a famous trail up there where it gets so steep that they have steps. It was brutal. But we're going to be at the Arcadian Shop this Saturday, which is October 11th. I don't know when this comes out, but the Arcadian Shop is a fantastic outdoor store in Lenox going towards Pittsfield.
Okay. Yeah, very good. Yeah, because I guess we have Ben Double N is out there, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Ben Griffin.
That's how I met Ben. He was handing out Gatorade, and as you know, Ben, he has this really deep voice. I was dying. Come to this table. He hands me this little cup of Gatorade. I said, please tell me that is it of the climbs. He's like, oh, you're not even halfway up this climb. and boy, was he right.
Oh boy. Jeez.
Brutal. Took me 2 hours and 11 minutes, if I remember right, to do those 9 miles.
Excellent, excellent. So, all right. So you wrote that book, and then, so that was your first, In Search of Al Howie was your first book on ultra running, and then, you went on to write another book, correct?
No,
Oh, well,
no.
okay. For some reason, I was thinking The Black Sheep. Is that not your?
This is one of those things that happens. You're researching a book, you're interviewing
Yeah.
people for that book being the Al Howie book.
Yes.
You're interviewing this guy named Tom McGrath, who is he's just gold. He's a beautiful man.
Yes.
Bar owner, Irish, completely Irish, as Irish as you can possibly be, in Manhattan. He has this bar, the Black Sheep. I'm interviewing about how he's got this weird look on his face. He's like, I want you to write my book. I said, but I'm writing this book on Al Howie. He said, I'll pay you. I said, okay.
Yeah, I'm in.
And I would just mainly helped edit his words and tried to help the prose a little bit with him. It was his ideas, what he wanted to communicate. My name is on it. It came out before the Howie book because he self-published it. So it's not really my book per se.
I got you.
It's really Tom's ideas. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, very good. All right. Well, then I guess that kind of brings us over to the book that you have out now about Laz. So, what was it that brought you to, kept you on topic there? Is it because it's an area that you feel that you're now familiar with, or how did the idea or the beginnings of the book, what kind of drew you to that?
Well, I've always been interested in people the most. I never thought of myself as someone who could write about the nuts and bolts of running or how to improve. There are much better people than me to do that.
Sure.
There will always be people that can do that.
Yeah.
Because there will always be really good runners, and they can help and tell other people how to do that.
I was,
like I said, I was yeah, sure, absolutely. I was a theater person. I was a literature person. My deal when I started writing, then after the Howie book, I got journalism offers, was to do profiles. I profiled a Mexican marathoner who was 47 years old and getting faster. He also happened to be working in a building in Queens, sweeping the floors and vacuuming. It was absolutely unbelievable. He was fantastic. But my career as a writer then became almost strictly profiling individuals. I could do that. It made sense to me. At that time in 2019, Lazarus Lake was everywhere. The Barkley documentary had been out for like 5 years. There was another documentary on Gary Robbins' failed attempt at the Barkley. So I was always hearing about these things, but it wasn't really until 2022 when the New York Times was going to send me down to Tennessee to cover this incredible idea of a race that I came to loggerheads with him, and that is actually what began the book. Let me just say now, everything about writing this book was impossible. Everything was impossible. So they were having this backyard ultra championship. It was going to be 37 countries around the world racing against each other.
Yes.
And the New York Times was going to send me down there, but the problem was Laz would not give me a press pass for it. I was pulling my hair out. I was trying to make my way as a writer. I didn't have another job. I still don't have another job. So these articles are really important. I'd only done one for the Times. I was so worried I was going to be a one and done. That was it, because the editor there had taken my pitch out of the slush pile. That was my first article that I did for the Times on this woman, Marge Hickman, who wanted to go back and run Leadville for the 15th time. So to have a chance to do another article, I thought this could be a career. I could be like a New York Times reporter on ultra running. So I had all these ideas, but I couldn't get this press pass from him. He was giving me these cryptic emails. He was. I
can just picture this shit, right?
Man, he gave me a math problem.
Yeah.
And then he pivoted. I solved the math problem, but confessed to him that I indeed gave it to my wife. There's something about Laz I wanted to be honest with him. I did. I gave it to my wife. She solved it. I sent it back to Laz. He said, "Did you give it to your wife?" He's like, just like saw through me. I said, "I did." So he pivoted and said, "Why don't you come down 2 weeks before this championship and run? Why don't you come run Little Dog's Backyard Ultra?"
Little Dog, right? Yeah, yeah. Mm.
Well, this had been 3 years since I had started riding professionally, didn't have another job. I was wicked out of shape. How can you say no, though, right? I thought, I'm going to go down there and earn this pass for Biggs. I went down there, met him, and bombed. I absolutely bombed in this race in a backyard. I had no idea what I was getting into. I had a buddy as a handler. He was just sitting over there. I had no food hardly, very, very few liquids, and I was already talking myself out of it. So I waited until he was no longer at the arch at the front. He's usually just standing there watching us, soaking up our trepidation. When he wasn't, I grabbed my cooler and I snuck out of there, went home. It was a huge failure for me on many levels. I beat myself up on the drive back, not only about my running and how bad I did, but was wondering if I had the same kind of attitude, that bled over into other areas of my life where I wasn't giving it my all, where I was leaving a lot out on the field or talking myself out of it. The negative self-talk, oh, I'm just there to write, I'm not there to run, blah, blah, blah. And I thought that the journey with him was over. But the time came for the championship. I had no pass. I did get a link from him, a Zoom link, and it was unbelievable. I clicked it. There were 37 boxes, a nation inside each box. He rang a cowbell. These runners took off in Germany in a rainstorm. There were runners in South Africa going around a brush fire. There were these Ukrainian runners. They were running under a sky streaked with cruise missiles. They had a tent that was covered in camouflage. They had this kind of netting over their timing device. They couldn't use a bell or a horn. They were whispering to each other, 1, 2, 3, go. I was so taken by it and screwed because I wanted to go down there and cover the American team, which was running in Tennessee, that what I did was just focus the article on the Ukrainians. So the New York Times was okay with that. The article came and went, and I was very proud of it. And it was after a week or so that I got another email from him. Could have been longer. It wasn't too long though. He emailed me and told me that failure had to hurt. And I wanted to reply, doesn't it usually? He said, come and see both of these races. Man versus mountain, man versus himself. You won't find two different formats. One is, can you do it? The other is, will you do it? And he included a press pass for the 2023 Barkley and the 2023 Backyard World Championship. So in my case, failure after failure after failure eventually led to something. And looking back on it now, it didn't really mean shit how I ran for him. That was not what it was about. It was to me personally. I was talking to someone the other day. It reminded me a little bit of Rocky when he has that moment when he's pretending that Apollo Creed making fun of him doesn't bother him. And then when he's outside the house, he says, Adrian, it did. That's when he started training harder, doing better, eating better. So yeah, that became a years-long, 3 years after that, 3 years-long journey with him, with Laz. Going to the races, talking with him, and then eventually crewing him on his walk across America.
Wow. Yeah, it's got to be a lot. I mean, it's always interesting when we fail, right? Because I mean, in the scheme of things, running is supposed to be something that we can fail at and be comfortable, with, right? But we attach so much importance to our races at times, right? And as far as like our self, at times we can attach our self-worth to that, like if I do this or if I don't do this, this tells what kind of person I am. And and it can be devastating. I mean, when you do something and you're like, like I had a race that it was a 100-mile race that I stopped at 75 miles. And the race director said that anybody could stop at these different times and get an official finishing time. And so everything was cool, except that I looked in the mirror and I was like, oh, you fucking asshole. What did you do? What did you, why did you stop? And so it's I can see that, like, after something like that, especially when it's it has the extra juice of being a career part of your, kind of
And maybe an
attached to that.
audition to get
Yeah.
an inside loop on the World Championships. But before we go too far, you did 3 loops there, Jared, right? Is that I was looking at
I did 3 or 4.
yeah,
I
think
can't
it said
really remember.
12.5 miles, I think. So I was just assuming that's 3 loops.
Yeah, that's 3
You
loops.
probably
Yeah.
weren't the worst person there. I'll bet some people pooped out after 1 or 2, right?
No, there was someone who quit before me, and that is if that hadn't happened, I believe I would have gone further. That's what really bothered me the most, was not me in comparison to the other people, though. It was why I quit. I was beating myself up a lot about it on the way home. I was thinking about it. Why did I quit when I did? And the answer was really simple. I felt bad. I was feeling bad physically.
Oh.
But, how often do we do that?
Yeah.
Quit because we start to get uncomfortable. I had become a 3-mile a day, run when the weather's nice, feel good runner.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that doesn't go usually very far in Laz's races. So I apply that more to my writing now, or to how I am as a husband or as a human being, rather than my running. I didn't suddenly become some huge ultra runner. I still haven't. But I do think about when I get into discomfort in situations, things that are uncomfortable. Writing is damn hard. Nathaniel Hawthorne said, "Easy reading is damn hard writing," and he was right. It's a lonely profession. You're at a desk or in a coffee shop, usually by yourself with headphones on, thinking about something that happened in the past, or you're thinking about someone else's life. So I've used a lot of that, and I hope that readers can get that from the book. I think there are people that get that from his races, especially the Vol States, the last annuals, like the Vol State and Hots. There are people that aren't even runners that enter and finish those. I think there's a lot of takeaway there in allowing yourself to fail, or allowing yourself to be uncomfortable and to keep going.
So, lots of times these are like soul searching efforts, right? So do you find that, and I know with acting, and you can tell me much better than I know, when you're in the flow state of acting, you're connected with the emotions of that situation, and 100%, like you're dialed into some, maybe you're tapping into some childhood trauma or something like that to reach that point of acting. And so do you see a connection between your acting, your writing, and your running ultras? Those 3. Have you ever tried to, are they similar in some way?
I would say not so, and I'm not so certain that that's the correct answer. Acting and writing, definitely, there's a through line. Stories have been really, in many ways, the center of my being. From the time I was a boy and growing up in Alabama, the stories from people that I grew up with, my family, the stories that I saw, then to making stories happen on stage or film, then to writing stories. The transcendent experience, though, is absolutely an authentic thing that happens in the races that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
The Backyard Ultra was unbelievable in 2023. I saw things there that I never thought that I would see in a race. I felt things that I never thought I would feel in a race. The journalistic walls came down. I'm not used to rooting for people. I'm definitely not used to going out onto a course to extract an individual that's been running for 80 hours, has completely lost his brain, and is laying out in a forest, a Japanese man who can't speak English.
Mm-hmm.
Japanese is my second language. My wife is Japanese. I had a tutoring service in Manhattan for 10 years with Japanese companies. So Laz asked me if I would go out there to take this man out, you know. Oh, I was already sleep deprived myself. Covering his races is damn hard. You don't get much sleep when you're hanging around Lazarus Lake, that's for sure, and no matter what capacity. I went out there and saw this man. He was gone. He had blood all over his elbows and his knees, which had been taped up with various band-aids. There were different colors of blood. There was dried, darker dried blood. Then there was like fresher blood that was oozing out. His eyes were swimming around with the leaves. He had an assistant. The problem was she was a complete wreck. She took him dropping or collapsing as her responsibility. She was weeping and just apologizing over and over again. That's all she could do was apologize. I saw him when he started to gain some kind of consciousness there, put his arm around her neck and comfort her, telling her, "Daijoubu desu yo, daijoubu. It's okay. It's okay." He had the wherewithal to think about how she felt in that moment. It was really something you talk about theater. I mean, it's this real life theater. You're there and you don't know what condition this man is in. Now, Laz had given me some instructions. He said, if you can, find out if he's okay with cameras, because if he's in a bad way, he doesn't want these cameras on him. There won't be. They won't be. You call me and I will make sure that nobody has a lens on him. I started to speak to him in Japanese to try to figure out what was going on with his brain. He moved his eyes over to me. I said, "Do you know where you are?" He thought for a moment. "Tennessee." I thought, okay. Maybe we're going to live. We're going to live here, you know?
Yes.
Got around to asking him if he was okay with cameras. You know what? He was beaming with pride. This guy was the Japanese national champion. They had five Japanese runners. Over there, they call it last samurai standing. So you can imagine what kind of spirit he was bringing to this event. There are certain visas that have to be earned, support. You have to take off work. You have a wife and kids in his situation. How could he come over there and quit in the chair and not die on the course, as they say? Dying on the course means you are going to time out. You're going to go out there until you can't go anymore. A lot of people quit from between the chair and the start line. He wasn't going to do that. His body had quit, but his mind hadn't quit. So he had this unbelievable, unexplainable, really, pride in his face that he hadn't, that pressure, that weight was off of him. He was totally okay with cameras. She and I got his arms over our shoulders, and we brought him in.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, there's always the question of, the crux of every race, whether it's a 5K, 100-miler, or a long timed event. And that's the one of, am I going to, like in a 5K, am I going to pass this person in front of me? Am I going to make every effort to pass this person in front of me? Or am I going to kind of mail it in and just stay with him and maybe hold off the person behind me? Or what am I going to, what do I want to do with it? And it looks the same to people. Nobody can tell what's going on. You're the only one who knows what's going on, whether you're giving it your all or not, and I mean, to a certain extent, and so it sounded like he knew what the crux was, and that he had, it's great that he had some pride in that, because at that point,
and he went till he couldn't go anymore. I mean,
yeah,
Laz used to have a term for the people who ended up in the chair, and he would say, "Refuse to continue."
Yeah.
Right? Like you've finished
Yeah.
your loop, but you're not going to even get in the little square
Yeah.
to start the thing again.
yes,
And they still
yes.
had that. They still had that in 2023 when I was there.
Yeah.
Refused to continue. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that's always the I think the beauty, and maybe you can talk some more about this, and I know Fred's done a great job in the past of kind of digging into this in some of our conversations, where how Laz designs these races and what is the thought process for bringing out
I'm guessing Jared got all to the bottom of this, but back in the earlier 2000s, I joined the Ultra List in like 2006. So back then, Laz was musing about the idea of a race like this, like a last man standing race. Like, what if? And I think that it was sort of like the intelligence of the crowd was kind of like, why don't you make it so that every 24 hours will be exactly 100 miles? So it's 4.166, each loop. So that the 24 hours make the 100 miles. And then, I mean, like, look what it's become. But anyway, I'm sure Jared talked to Laz about this. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It was the first race that he ever thought up. He was in high school. He was on the track team and he was on the cross country team. Unfortunately, he wasn't good enough to score. He was the last man for a while. Then he told his buddy Carl Raw Dog Hen, "You should join the track and cross country team." Raw Dog did, and beat him out for the last spot. When it came to practice, however, he was a grunt. The coach loved to use him at the end of practice to run against the best runners because he would never give up. So he had envisioned way back then a race where they would do something around 4 miles an hour around the track back then, he thought, to see who would be the last one standing. And he obviously believed that he would be the last one. There were also some other things that I found too coincidental. There's a book, now there's a movie called The Long Walk by Stephen King.
Yes.
There are several things in that book. Let me just list off a few, and you tell me if any of this sounds familiar. You have to maintain a 4 mile an hour pace, or you're shot. It's a last runner standing competition. After a runner drops and is shot, they play taps. To get into the walk, you have to fill out an application. You have to write an essay on why you should be allowed in. And Laz has written about The Long Walk being one of his favorite books, along with Shapiro's book. Shapiro's book on Meditations from a Breakdown Lane. Those two books he said were some of his favorites. So I thought, there's a lot that might have filtered into his brain from that, had been lingering around, bouncing around in there for a couple of decades, mixed with that early idea. However, there's also a certain inevitability to the backyard. For Laz, who was creating all these other races like the Barkley and Strolling Jim, he had a precursor to the Barkley called the Idiot's Run. It was also a limit-seeking exercise. However, I think what he was getting at was trying to strip away talent. He was looking for some way to get talent out of the way, make this just about willpower, then in the Barkley, certain mental skills, orienteering, things like that. But when he creates the backyards in 2011, I think that he had whittled down his concept into something really, really, really simple. I think there's a lot of things that fed into it. He had been laid off the year before. He had found Big the year before, so it's now named after Big. I think it all came together to create this format for, like he told me, it's not about whether you can do it, it's whether you will do it.
Mm.
So I think the social scientist in him, it's inevitable. It's no coincidence either that he's given away all of his other races. Someone else's race directing all of them except the backyards. That's where he wants to focus his attention.
Mm. Now, did you guys discuss the concept of the night loops versus the day loops, or
Yeah.
kind of that? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Originally, there were no night loops. It was all on the trail.
Mhm.
People were just busting their ass too much. You're busting your ass already during the day. I can tell you from experience. Even in my short time on that trail, I took 2 big falls. Oddly enough, according to Walter, told me she fell in exactly the same spot, which is a flat area. When you think, oh, I'm out of all that twisted, gnarly stuff, that's when you hit a toe tapper, and there you go.
And that's very flattering, like that you would be in the same sentence as Courtney, right? So you probably felt better about your fall.
I love that.
You know, only a few years ago, you could go to a backyard and line up against someone like
Yeah.
Courtney Dauwalter. It was a remarkable thing.
Mm.
Yeah, that made me feel good that she fell. She doesn't in the same spot that I did. I took some solace in that fact. But back to your question. So after the first year, then they thought, well, we just can't have them out there on the course at
Mm.
night. There, it's going to be too much. So let's get them on the road, which in turn created this interesting dichotomy, really, of skills and equipment. So you got people that hate the road, then you got people that hate the trail. You've got the first hour back on the trail after you've been on the road all night, which is a brutal switch. A lot of people drop after that first trail loop coming back once they get back on it.
Mm.
To watch these, I think they'll see 23 runners went 72 hours. To see them go back to that trail loop, the next morning, go back to that trail loop, go back to it again. Unbelievable, unprecedented. 47 runners went 48 hours. Imagine that in the multi-day history, going back to the pedestrians and all that. To think that you would have 8 runners make 400 miles in 4 days in this format where you're made to stop. Truly remarkable.
Yeah, it is. I always think, and I think that Fred might have brought this up as well, in that when you go to that night loop, like I think I've had times where I'm running on trails where, and it's deep in a race, and you're just like, you're thinking like, oh, get me the hell out of here. Like, I just, like, if only, and I've had this wish, I don't know if you've ever had it, where you're like, if only I could trip and break my leg and then I could stop, and it wouldn't, I wouldn't be able to continue, and it would be legit, like some part of you, not that I go taking a dive or anything like that, but that thought occurs that, like, oh, that would be kind of cool if that happened in some sick way. The road takes that off the table, because now it's like, can you or will you, like you said, with the road, chances are, even
that
though
was no accident. I
Yeah.
think that, the first year Tim England won with 18 loops. So it never made it.
Right.
It wasn't even a 24-hour race. Second year, Joe Fee just did it with 28, and then Tim England came back and won it with 35. The third year, and I think that they may have finished it by then. But
there's one more before that. There's one more before that that was not considered a Big's backyard. In 2010, he tried a 12-hour.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he tried this 12-hour deal, and he had just people that he knew, like good Mike Melton, some other people, maybe Naresh Kumar was there. I think his son Gary,
Naresh, John Price was there that year, I think probably too.
Yeah. So they were experimenting with what to do.
But I mean, I think that when people couldn't really do more than 24 hours, he was like, I got to make it so that it's more of a head game than a physical thing. Like I don't want them to be able to quit because it's 3 in the morning and they have to go out on that trail again. I want them to have easy road miles in the night. So and it proved to do it, like that.
Mm.
That was the secret sauce.
Yeah, it is something how the other thing that gets me with timed races is when you have a loop, and if they're only going to give you credit if you do a full loop, the torture that puts on you is incredible. Where because most of the time you can tell you can start doing the trail math like 5 hours before, 3 hours before, like, okay, I'm doing, each loop is X and I have just enough time to get all these in. And and then you come down to the last one, the second, the penultimate one you do, and you're like, oh my God, like I'm going to go as fast as I can to get this done. But like, if my time is under this, I'm like not going to be able to do another loop. And then sure as shit, you're like within a minute of where you have to be. And it's like, oh my God, oh no, I have to go back out again. And really, and really I'm doing this and I'm going to see if I can get one more loop,
There was that kind of situation that popped up when I was doing an ultra marathon before I even knew who Laz was.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the many things that started pointing me in his direction. I was doing a 12-hour race in my hometown on a 1-mile loop. It was a pretzel loop. It was in horrible conditions. It had rained, then it had frozen over, then it had gotten hot, melted. So there were all these huge slush puddles. It was a horrible course that day. I had finished with something like 48 miles or 56 miles. I can't remember. I was somewhere around 10th or 11th place. And I went to the timing tent. There was something like 5 minutes to go. This guy comes running by me. I'd recognize this figure because he kept lapping me. I thought he was one of those relay runners. I realized that he wasn't, because he was leading the race by a good margin. He had done 73 miles. He was running straight through these mud puddles. Most of us that I saw, we were going around the edges, getting mired up in the mud, just keep our feet supposedly dry. He was just grunting and grimacing, going right through the middle of it. I turned to the race director. I said, has this guy done, a 5-minute mile? He says, oh, no, not even close. That's just Dwayne Satterfield being Dwayne Satterfield. That blew me away. So he knew, and he kept going. He knew that the partial laps didn't count. There was something in Dwayne Satterfield. I wanted to know what that was. I was captivated by this guy. I saw him like 2-3 years later on my television screen. He was in the Netflix documentary at the Barkley. He was coming back after one loop. He was laying on the side of the trail, mumbling to himself. So my hero in my mind, like the toughest guy I had ever ran with, and then there was this guy. Then there were other people then he was this zombie figure, collapsed after one loop of 5, unable to continue.
Great runner, though. Great runner, Dwayne.
Great runner. This is really, life is so damn weird. I would end up, one of my first journalistic pieces would be to write his obituary. It was a shocking turn of events. I wrote it for Ultra Running Magazine. He was only 55 years old. He had held the Ball State record for years. He was a tremendous person, an individual. Then to be at the Barkley in person, not in the documentary, but to be there covering it and hear Laz call his name out as the list that he reads out before they start each year of the ones, the Barkleys, the Barkers that have gone on. It was a surreal turn of events for me.
Wow. Jeez, I bet that's it is something to see, to see your local legends, compared, and then you wonder, like, everything's relative out there, right? So
yeah.
geez.
He was an unbelievable runner, a great person. There's also a split between who does well in the backyards and who does well at the Barkley.
Mhm.
They're generally not the same kind of runner. There's
Yeah.
been a couple of examples of people that have done well in both. I imagine if John Kelly were to get into backyards, he would do quite well. But Courtney Dauwalter didn't do well at the Barkley. She did extremely well in the backyards. Laz has told me that if she wanted to, she would be the best backyard runner in the world. That's what he said.
Did Harvey ever run the Barkley? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah,
I
Harvey
don't
was
think he did
there.
well at the Barkley, right? And he's
Never done
fantastic in
more
the
than one.
backyards.
Yeah, he's never done more than one loop.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
I was
You're
there
talking
with
about
him.
Harvey Lewis, by the way.
Yes. Yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
So what do you think makes, I mean, so for Barkley, Barclays, do you think that's a, is it being the engineer type? Is that the best approach? Or, I mean, or do you think there's a lot of different ways to get it done? Or who do you think is best suited for that?
90% of the finishers have had a postgraduate degree.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely something of the puzzle solver type of person that does well at the Barkley. Of course, you've got to have all kinds of chops with your endurance, your climbing ability, your upper body strength is very important at the Barkley. People don't realize that. You're doing a lot of 4-point hiking, getting up to these things. It's 45 degrees of slope in many places. There is something else about the woodsmanship that's required, knowing different types of trees. Definitely knowing what a birch tree or a beech tree, I'm sorry, is extremely important.
That's legendary. The beech tree. Yeah.
Now, why is that important? Is it on your map, like as behind the beech tree or something, or?
Well, he hides these books, right? And one of them has famously been in a hole, which used to be a rattlesnake den in this beech tree. A funny story about that is there's a guy out there named Hiram. God, what an amazing guy. He's in his 70s and he runs sweeps for the Barkley Fall Classic. He also sets out the books. He's also the guy that comes and gets the books now after the race is over. One year, Hiram was going up to take the book to the beech tree for the first time. Laz had told him that it used to be a rattlesnake den, but don't worry, there's no rattlesnakes there anymore. However, you've got to stick your hand into this dark hole under a tree. Coming from the country, I just don't want to do that anywhere, especially if I know there used to be rattlesnakes there. So Hiram puts the book there. He's okay. It's only when he's walking away and going back that he sees a rattlesnake, not 15 yards from that hole. Takes a picture of it, a picture of a beautiful timber rattler, shows it to Laz. The next year, the people come to run the Barkley, they sign up, do the registration, and they get their T-shirt. There's a big picture, that picture of the rattlesnake, and it says, the best thing about Barkley is the petting zoo.
Oh my gosh, a little psychological warfare there. So
it's the race that eats its young, right?
Do you find that the finishers tend to be tightly wrapped too? Like people who are not like if you think about Courtney Dauwalter, right? You think like smiley, laughy, I believe, at least on the outside, I mean, we all know that she has her own inner dialogue and things like that. But like, that kind of approach versus versus the engineer approach, like, okay, I will, this is what I'm doing. I'm staying on, association versus disassociation.
That's an interesting question. For the most part, I would say yes, but there's some pretty obvious exceptions. Jasmine is a very positive individual, works with animals, loves animals. She's also incredibly smart, but sees a lot of positivity in things. Her hallucination generally are seeing, sculptures and rainbow-esque figures out in the woods when she hallucinates on these longer runs. That's what I thought was one thing was interesting about her Barkley experiences, is that that's not what she was seeing in Frozen Head. She was seeing dark humanoid figures. There's a lot to unpack there. I mean, the place is not welcoming. It's not somewhere you want to go to run. I went and took a tour of the prison. The guard, the guy, they used to have guards that would give the tours. They don't allow the former guards to give tours anymore. There's so much history there. There's over 400 prisoners that are buried up in those mountains that were working the coal mines. A mine would cave in, the guards would just leave them. There's a lot of nastiness in those mountains. So Jasmine is definitely I wouldn't say she's a giggly person, but she's on that side of things, at least in the times that I've been around her. She's pretty good with a laugh and a joke. Doesn't take herself too seriously, I don't think. There was another guy, A.T. Andrew Thompson, that finished. He was different also, not a postgraduate degree type of person, someone who could only do one loop in the beginning. It took him 10 years of coming back and learning and keep improving until he finally finished. I think he was the 8th finisher. Yeah, a couple of exceptions.
Gotcha. Huh. So do you
There's
think
some people who finished it like 3 and 4 times who are just like unbelievably good runners, like good trail runners, but not like Western States winning type trail runners.
No,
just
they're
really
more
great trail
they're more
runners.
like through hikers, right?
Yeah, but
That type
one of
of
the things
thing?
that Laz says is like, don't think that you can just do this just hiking it.
Oh,
You got to
no,
run when
no.
you can run, because
Yeah.
there's this is
Time's
60
wasted.
hours doesn't, it seems like a lot, but it goes fast.
Yeah.
Well, we have one person that's done it 4 times. That's Jared Campbell. He's in a class of his own. Not only as a runner, as a human being. The guy built his own home, designed it, built it himself with a solar wall where the sun would heat up his home and keep it at exactly 73 degrees throughout the year. He had these certain, I mean, for a layman like me, I'm just going to say concoctions that he inserted into the walls to keep it at this temperature. He also had 3 arcs on the wall for the solstices and the equinox. But here's the kicker. Laz, when he went to visit him, he said, that's a damn impressive wall there. It must have taken you a lot of time to observe that, to get those arcs. And Jared said, what's the fun in that? And I said, well, you mean to tell me that you calculated this thing out, actually had painted this on the wall, and then waited to prove yourself right? Yeah, that's Jared Campbell. So 4-time finisher Jared Campbell, Hard Rock winner. Then you have John Kelly, 3-time winner, the local boy, grew up right there. His family is from Wartburg, Joyner. They're from Joyner, right there by Wartburg. It's all together. One of the mountains is actually named Kelly Mountain. His family has been there forever. John Kelly is a unique individual that's extremely well suited for the Barkley, FKTs, things like that. But we have what Brett did 2. Was his name Brett Mon did 2?
Brett Mon did 2. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are not many multiple finishers. Most people don't want to come back. I don't think we'll see Carl Saab back there.
No,
Mr.
no, I don't
FKT.
think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll see Jasmine back there.
Probably not. I think I asked Feggy one time whether or not he was interested in going back, and he was like, "No way. I did it. I did it. I'm done." Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. It's a wicked place.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that aspect of it. The I read a book about oh boy, it was about Thoreau and his association or his interpretation of wildlife or of nature and of the supernatural nature. and he was very much aware of a presence of other beings in his environment, and kind of called upon them, in his own words, I believe, to to get in touch with them, and so when he was out gathering samples of different different plants and things like that, sometimes he would know how to find these things, just by intuition and by like kind of tapping into that part of it. So I always wonder how much our own mindset makes these things visible or invisible to us. I mean, it's certainly something I haven't
Totally.
ruled out,
Totally. It's been pretty much proven to be a hoax, but I'll mention it just for the hell of it. Why not? The Amityville
it's culture.
Horror.
We call that a cultural fact.
but because we're in the New York area, the Amityville Horror, when it came out, the Lutz family that moved in there, the second family that the film and the book is basically based on, that's what they said happened to them, that they were into transcendental meditation, yoga. They came in there very open-minded, and that's because the DeFeo family had preceded them, and there had been a horrific murder in the house where the son had murdered the father, the mother, and then 3 of his siblings. And then the Lutzes didn't get the house on the cheap, right? And they're into meditation and yoga, all this open-minded stuff. He had also, I think, Mr. Lutz been into the occult, reading books like that. So I think most people believe it was a hoax by the Lutzes together with a writer, but they at least till the day they died said that it was not, and that they believed that they were just happened to be openly sensitive to that, because the people that moved in after that, they've been there for decades and have had no issue.
Well, I saw the movie, and the house definitely told them to get out.
Yes.
In like creepy, whispery language, like "get out." And
yeah.
All right. Well, if the house tells you to get out, you should get out before somebody murders somebody. Right?
I have had things where I've had negative thoughts on the trails and started to see more snakes, at my own observation. So
have the trails ever told you to get out, though?
No, most of the I think it was get the fuck out, Fred.
Oh, okay. Sassy trails.
Yes. Yeah. Or they punctuate it with a rattlesnake. So great, huh? Fred, did you have any other aspects of this that
well, I'm curious about your experience when Laz did his transcon, because I was there with him on day like 3 or 2 or something, like at when we went by Foxborough into Boston, and Feggy was there too. So the 2 of us escorted him into Boston, basically. But then, I know, like, he narrated like about 25 miles a day all the way to Oregon. So where did you crew him?
So that was in 2017, right? When he went all the way across. Yeah. I crewed him last year.
The one where he stopped in Oklahoma, right?
So yeah, but he's continuing on now, just in segments. He's made it to Utah.
Yeah, I was going to say he went from Oklahoma to Utah this year. Then he's going to try to finish it next year, right?
Yeah, he'll do it. So my arc with Laz really starts with a couple of years of no response to emails, to cryptic emails, to math problems, to getting tested, getting press passes for the 2023 Barkley Bigs. That becomes a kind of belt loop, if you will, or a spine for the book that I then weave his own story and background through. After that, after 2023, then it's 2024, I go with him in the spring on his second week. We go through Virginia and into West Virginia for 10 days. As you know, if you've been with him, it's this routine that he's very comfortable with, where life is just narrowed down to this simplicity of moving every day, and not having to, and having these, people to help you with getting food, getting a hotel, washing the clothes and all that, so that you can just keep your mind on that, and his unbounded curiosity about geological matters, historical matters, and things like that. So that rhythm and routine was unshakable. He would get up in the morning at 5, pop open a Dr. Pepper, smoke a cigarette, then he would drink a Bang, which is 16 ounces of like rocket fuel. Whatever's in that probably came from Area 51. If you were to read that label, it's just really horrible stuff for your body. Now, he was turning 70 when I was with him. And one thing he was saying was when I was there was that, hey, I realized I'm not 64 anymore, which is what he was when he was walking with you. So the fall before the walk, he had a stent put in his carotid artery. He still had the blocked femoral artery in his left leg and had the stent in that, but the stent had collapsed almost immediately within a year after having that put in. Graves' disease. He had a pinched nerve in his back. He has fused vertebrae in his neck. I mean, you name it. He's got a list of health issues a mile long. Can't run. He was down to 2.5 miles an hour, but he would do 10 hours a day. Get back and spend 2 hours every night writing up his recap, which was just as serious as all the rest of it.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
One of the other things about, did you talk to him about the virtual race stuff? Because he during COVID, like that
Yes.
absolutely took off. That was so popular, the virtual race across Tennessee.
Yes. Over
Unbelievable.
Yeah, like 20,000 people running 100K, a virtual 100K. And relationships.
It was 1,000K.
I'm sorry. Did I say 100K? I meant to say
a zero
1,000.
there.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Rounding error, Fred. Sorry. 1,000.
But yeah,
that's what I said.
Yeah, and the more envious of the ultra runners were trying to calculate how much he netted by having like 20,000 people to enter that race. And I was like, more power to Laz. He spent his whole life being dedicated to this ethic of unusual and extremely challenging races, like the Ball State, which I did once, like the Barkley, which I've never done, but and now like HOTS and Third Circle of Hell, and it just keeps going, so
there's a lot in the book that I think will surprise people about Laz. He wound up donating $350,000 to a food bank and an animal shelter from the money he made from that virtual race that year. I was just at the Barkley Fall Classic. We went on Thursday night before the Friday registration day. We went to a middle school football game in Coalfield. Every year, he donates $15,000 to them from the money he gets from the Barkley Fall Classic. Now, this is interesting in a way, I think, because when you go back into his career as a race creator, he's never charging people any money, any serious money. When he created the Idiot's Run, this was his first test of limit-seeking kind of races, It started at 76 miles, meant to be run on the dirt and gravel roads in Shelbyville area, War Trace, Bell Buckle, all that kind of area there. And he did it for 4 years. He was charging $5, then he would waive it. He knocked it down to $3, then he would waive it. He's charged only $1.60 for the application fee for the Barkley for all these years. That's the way it was until he gets laid off in 2011. For the first time, he's got to think about, maybe taking these race ideas, making more of them and charging reasonable amount of money, where he could pay off his mortgage. He had just gotten a new home, the home that he has in Bell Buckle where they have the backyard. So he had a mortgage. He had Big now, which was a wounded dog, the vet bills. You were on the ultra list, Fred, so you know that he was getting people on the ultra list to chip in.
Yep.
To pay.
People bought food and vet stuff for Big. Yep.
Yeah. And so he had to find a way to make some money then
Yeah, if you
from
go back in history,
2011
you're
on.
talking about the Barkley $1.60 still, but like when I ran Vol State in 2011, there was no entry fee. You just sent an email to Laz saying, I'm going to show up. And in fact, I sent him one like a couple months before, and like a week before the race, he was like, are you still coming to the race? And I was like, yep. He said, all right, I'll see you at the Last Supper. And that was it. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
there's no
Hmm.
bus, there's no entry fee, there was none of that stuff, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. All that comes later when he's got to figure out how to create literally what he and Sandra call the business. That's something that will surprise people. Laz is a very practical person. He's also
Hmm.
idealistic. With Biggs, with the Barkley, the practical side is never going to overtake the idealistic side. He's never going to charge the runners for those races. He still waives fees for these international runners that are coming over to run the backyards. But he, in 2011, he had to do something. He went to a local fleet feet and got turned down. They said that they were worried he might scare the customers.
Yeah, I was gonna say he doesn't look the part, right, with the beard and everything.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sandra was the person to recommend that he start creating new races and start charging more money to make some some income. And then you see a whole series of things that I don't think are coincidental. In 2011, you see the media come back to the Barkley. The media was in and out of the Barkley.
Hmm.
He led in 2005. The Barkley was going to be closed down. The Department of Environment and Conservation were going to close the Barkley down. It was a handful of Barkley runners, Stu Gleeman, and Laz, a couple of other people that are mentioned in the book, that wound up getting a piece of legislation passed in the Tennessee state legislature that saved the race.
Hmm.
However, it wasn't a permanent declarative piece of legislation. It was more of a recommendation that the Department of Environment and Conservation would adhere to. But when those lawmakers were out of power, Laz was very worried that they would renege on it. So he let the media in for the first time, and you get Eli Soslow, that came in 2007 and wrote for the Washington Post. Then you don't really see much again until 2011. Leslie Jamison comes down, a New York writer. She now teaches the nonfiction department over at Columbia. At that time, she had never written a nonfiction piece, only fiction. But her brother Bruce had been trying the Barkley, was telling her, you got to see this, it's amazing. And it's her article in the Believer magazine that is then read by these two camera assistants over in Los Angeles
Hmm.
who say, we need to make a documentary about this. Now Laz says, okay, you want to film? Come on. Because getting exposure and getting it written about is going to make it seem more viable. It's also going to show the Department of Environment and Conservation that we're doing what we said that we were going to do. We're only having 40 runners. We're minimizing the exposure of the native areas. So it's interesting how all of these things came to a head in 2011. His career, then the Barkley, the media, and after the documentary, what Fred was just talking about with Vol State was a completely different situation. Now you've got the Vol State selling out within an hour.
Hmm.
Mm.
That's when he created HOTS, the last annual Heart of the South, was because the Vol State had sold out. There are people that still wanted a similar experience.
Hmm. Now,
And I think some people, the Vol State became such a thing across Tennessee that there were so many angel stations that Laz was thinking that it was too easy. So with HOTS, you don't know where the starting line is, and you don't know what the course is. So there aren't going to be there's a lot of like angel aid on the course. So it's just harder.
Yeah.
Same thing, a little longer, usually like 350 miles and harder. So
Yeah.
so
Well,
did Laz get paid for the documentary?
oh no, not at all. Those are independent filmmakers
Wow.
that
Okay.
came. They didn't have a distributor when they made that. They didn't even know
Hmm.
they were making a documentary. They were not sure what they were making.
Mm.
it
Have you ever
turned
seen
into
it?
more and more.
Have you ever seen it, Art? It's
Oh,
great.
yes,
It's a
yes.
great
Yeah,
film.
yeah. The race that
I was like out of my chair rooting for Veggie to finish. And I
oh
knew,
yeah.
Yeah.
I already knew he had finished because I
Yes.
knew,
Yes.
you know, and I'm like, come on, Veggie.
So how does he keep from getting sued on all of these things?
Well, you have to basically sign a disclaimer. I believe he's got a waiver or whatever in the beginning when you sign up for these races. You mean with like the last annuals?
Yeah, I mean, well, yes, with those, I mean, really with mostly with Barclays and with those, yes. Like given its
Yeah.
extreme,
Jared
it's
Campbell, Jared Campbell said something that's really interesting. He said the Barkley is the only race that he's ever been to where there wasn't a required equipment list of what you need to have when you come to the race.
For a race that hard, that's true. Yeah.
The result of that he finds is that the runners that come to the Barkley are some of the most prepared runners that he's been around. That is Laz in a nutshell, a way of getting people to do things. He told me one time that the best thing you can do, so with dealing with children, is to give them a job. And that seems to be kind of antithetical to me to childhood, but that's what he did, and he coached for 25 years basketball at the local high school, and he also created this traveling team for elementary school kids. They would go to various games that he would organize with neighboring towns. He would run the practices. He would drive them in his van. And I asked him once, how did you keep order with all these kids? He's like, I always gave them a job, gave them something to do to make their mind focus. So he's incredibly unconventional in his methods, but they somehow produce remarkable results in getting people to be prepared. It's 100% self-extraction rate at the Barkley. There hasn't been anything that, to my knowledge, at the Barkley that would warrant any kind of a lawsuit.
Yeah.
The worst thing that happened at one of his races is at Hots a few years ago when someone was hit by a car, and that's the one tragic thing. I mean, Vol State's been going on. I did Vol State and it was small. Now it's like 5 times the size, and people will walk themselves or run themselves on the road till they're delirious. And I'm surprised nobody's been hit by a car, but nobody has at Vol State. So
Right. Well, there was someone killed at I think, has it been 2 now in the Keys 100?
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yep.
Which is also a road race, that where they go over the 7 Mile bridge there that
Yes.
goes out to the Keys. Yikes.
Yeah, you're totally exposed there.
And when I was walking with him on his walk across America, he was on a shoulderless road in West Virginia, going around curves.
Well,
thinking
Jared,
that
a lot of Barclays like that. I mean, not Barkley, I'm sorry. A lot of Vol States like that. You're like you're standing on the rumple strip and it's the like the white line, and that's it. You've got like there's nothing. Yeah.
He still believed at 70 he had the reflexes to get out of the way if a car were to come around really quick,
I don't know, but I do know this. I can add this. I I drove cross country a couple weeks ago, and I was on Route 20 in Oregon, which is the route that he took to go to Newport, Oregon. And I was on Route 20 in Eastern Oregon, and that was so unpleasant even to drive. Like the speed, it's a 2-lane road with like maybe a 6 to 8 foot shoulder, and the speed limit's 65, and cars and trucks are just whizzing by it. And this is about like 75 miles, and I'm like, this is 3 of Laz's days, right? On this one stretch of relatively flat, like pretty straight, but really like unpleasant road. But he did the whole thing, so.
Yeah. Well, like Al Howie that we were talking about earlier, Laz, his background was really as a journey runner. In the multi-days, he did not fare very well. In the 6 days that he did with Bill Schultz, he was next to last I think. And Emil, my neighbor that I was telling you about a little while ago, he was also in that race. It's funny. And then in the other ultras that he did, he didn't fare very well. So his real core, was going out and running from place to place, and the freedom that journey running provides, marking his map up, searching out new areas,
I was
new
going to say that he's
geological
got the
formations.
physical map that he would mark up of Tennessee.
Yeah.
He's like been in every county in the state, and yeah.
The map itself is a remarkable thing. It's actually a bunch of county maps that have been taped together to form the entire state. And it's about 30 feet long, and he's got nearly every road marked in orange.
Wow.
So for
Very impressive.
him, that kind of road experience, it's just the way that it was and the way that it will always be for him. Now, Rob Apple, who's now run 828 ultra marathons, he has a very different take. He won't do road runs like that anymore. And I remember him telling me, he said, Jared, if I can't see the whites of the driver's eyes anymore, I'm not running on the road. Talking about people in their cell phones, and that sent him to the trails.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was just going to say one of the things about Laz that people have speculated, and people have said, like, like he's very sadistic. He puts these races together that'll just grind people up and make them miserable. But actually, I think it's exactly the opposite. I feel like he's putting these races together to draw the best out of people. I mean, I think at the Vol State, he would laugh at us when we were suffering, but underneath that was, you're going to finish, right? You're going to do this. And one of his sayings about the Vol State is ordinary people doing extraordinary things. So he really wants people to reach, to dig deep, but to succeed, not to fail.
What you just said there about what he said is something that my acting teachers used to tell me what theater was. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And when you see someone like Harvey Lewis, I think he exemplifies that. Absolutely. What he did in 2023 at the Backyard, Harvey Lewis was a guy that spent 10 years of his education in special ed until he was in the 10th grade. Ran his first marathon when he was like 15 years old. Took him another 5 years to break 5 hours. There was nothing there suggesting Harvey Lewis was going to have a running career. But everything that he was faced with, he chiseled his way out like the Count of Monte Cristo. That was one of his favorite books as a child, was the Count of Monte Cristo. Locked away unfairly, the way that he felt being in special ed was unfair. He was a chubby kid. He was bullied. But he chiseled his way out. And then when it came to running, he grew up idolizing people like Schwarzenegger and Stallone. He's from my generation, basically, Harvey. And we grew up watching that on the screen. And they were using their physicality to overcome adversity. So Harvey has continued to do that. He when he got into the backyards, he was not a great success. He quit a few times that he's looked back on and felt very bad about. He just literally gave up. And then to go on to win it and become the national champion a couple of times over and a world record holder, to go to Badwater and finish, I think 14 times he's done it now. He's won it twice. The 24-hour team, he's had a lot of success there.
Yes, he has. Yep.
He just got married.
He's actually an elementary school teacher too, right? Is that...
Well, high school, yeah.
Was it high school?
Yeah. To think that he had come from special ed to where he's teaching AP government at a high school in Cincinnati. That's Harvey, and that's something that Laz was calling a Danny in the time that I was around him. Someone that's not big, not strong, not talented, but just wants it more than you do. And the backyard format is really created for that type of individual. And Danny was a guy named Danny Rucker, who was on the baseball team with his son Case. Laz had coached him on that traveling basketball team I was telling you about. And the kid was a backup until they took out I think it was an injury or whatever. I can't remember. The second baseman in front of him was out of the game. Danny goes in, and once he got in there, he wasn't going to give up that spot. He wound up becoming one of the best players on the team. He just clutch.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. There's something about ultra running. Like when you get it, it's like, you know what, this is, at this point, you reach the point where you're like, I don't care how many miles I have to go. I'm running until this is done, you know, and it's not, you know, it's not about, sometimes it's not, you know, before I was asking you to kind of connect those three things. And after I asked the question, I kind of thought about it myself, and it was like, yeah, actually a lot of times taking emotion out of my running and staying out of touch with a lot of these things is helpful. Like, you know, sometimes it's best to just like, whatever it is, it doesn't matter how far it is. I'm just going to keep going until I get there, until I'm done, you know.
Al Howie had an amazing ability to distract himself. It's not concentration. It's not concentration that gets you 63 miles a day every day for 72 days. It's the ability to distract yourself. Laz has that as well. He's so interested in so many things on his walks. The history of this town, the history of this road, the three generations of guardrails, of highway guardrails. You know,
that
sounds, now you're talking my language there.
He's very into the geology too. I mean, like he waxes about the geology every night when he does this.
Yeah. He was talking to me about these guardrails. He's like, "Come on, man! You know the different generations of guardrails." I'm like, "I don't. I've never really thought about it, Laz." Well, well, you've got the first kind that's just an abutment there, where if you were to slam into it, it's going to impale you. And then there's the kind that go down into the ground, where if you were to hit it, it would launch you Dukes of Hazzard style into the air. And then you've got this new kind there where you see the yellow and black stripes on it that's got this recoil, device. I've never thought of that. What's interesting is that he wound up writing about it in a post on our walk. And I shit you not, the guy that created that got wind of it and emailed him.
That's great.
Changing lives, right?
Yep.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, that is awesome. So, Jared, so two questions, and one of them, you could always tell us that it's in the book if you don't want to answer. So, is there anything that is next for Laz that you can talk about, or that you want to talk about? Right.
That's not in the book.
Okay. All right. But maybe it is.
Yeah. No, it's definitely not right, not Fred? In the book.
Culture guarantee, it's hinted at.
He's laser focused on finishing this walk across America. He's also laser focused on expanding backyards. They're now in over 80 countries around the world. There are some countries that have more backyards than they have marathons, like Sweden. It's a remarkable thing. He's more well known in Europe than he is here. We did an event to launch the book in Nashville. We had a sold out house in this beautiful building, 200 people. We were signing books until they flicked the lights to get us out of there. I turned to one of the producers, I guess, for lack of a better word, of the event, one of the backers from Ultra Sign Up. I said, "Man, that's unbelievable. These people. I was not expecting this kind of turnout, and I wasn't expecting everybody to stay after the talk to get their book signed." He said, "Yeah, it's pretty amazing. However, in France, we had to usher Laz out of the building."
Wow, that is amazing. So, Jared, is there anything for you that you might have coming up? I mean, this is like, you have to enjoy the moment, I know, but is there any and I guess you have a rewrite coming out, you said, of In Search of Al Howie.
Yeah, those two things. So continuing to do events for this book. It took me 5 years to write it. It's going to be another year at least promoting it, getting it out
Yes.
there, doing as many events as I can. At the same time, finishing up this rewrite of the Al Howie book, and that's all I can in the foreseeable future. That's all I can handle.
Understood. Understood. So,
Yeah.
yeah, certainly there. I don't know if any of us could name a more colorful, interesting, deep character than Laz in our world right now. You know, in our ultra running world. So, what a great what a great topic. And I read part of your book, and it's wonderfully written. And we will definitely have a link to it in the show notes. And actually, we're going to give away a couple copies to our listeners there too. And maybe our Patreons, Fred. What do we say here?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Patreons.
Okay. Yes, we will do that. And it's been so fun to learn more about Laz and about how you've approached his story, and and it's a great just the way that you've approached this thing is a very interesting and well written way to do it. So I encourage everybody to go out and buy this, if you have a pulse, right? So,
And it's going to be on the final exam, so you better read the book, people.
yeah. No there's no cliff notes of this,
No cliff
right, Jared?
notes.
No.
All right, got to read
Yeah.
it.
So did he like you more because your name was Jared? Just I gotta ask that because of that.
No, I can't say that.
Okay.
I think that if he did like me more, if I'm allowed to say that he liked me at all, it's more because I was from North Alabama. He
Yeah.
took
Okay.
he took a lot. He took a lot of pride in being able to give me the elbow because he's from Tennessee, which is in his mind, a cultural step up.
Okay. All right.
And you grew up not that far from where Ball State finishes, right? Like
Yeah.
about 40 miles, 50 miles, maybe.
Yeah, actually, my father's family, where I spent so much time, is just about an hour from where Laz grew up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well,
So before we stop,
yes, Fred, please, closing arguments.
I want to give Jared props for mentioning Stu Gleeman, who was a great guy. He's definitely on the list of Barkley runners who've passed on. Yeah, fantastic guy. Stu Gleeman was a PhD in chemistry, and you could call him a rocket scientist, but it would piss him off because he thought those guys were hacks. He actually held a bunch of patents involved in the space program, but he didn't want to be described as a rocket scientist. So, but a great guy, and he was the founder of the Ancient Oaks 100. So,
Yeah.
so
I'm so glad that you brought that up. Stu Gleeman is a big part of this book. Stu Gleeman was in very bad health going into ARFTA, a race for the ages. That's a race format that we haven't talked about. That's absolutely ingenious, where runners are given an hour for every year of their, that they've lived. So a 70-year-old gets 70 hours, a 40-year-old gets 40 hours. If you're under 40, I think you're capped at 40.
you still get 40.
Yeah, Stu asked to die on the course, mid-race. That's what he wanted to do. He had entered a week or two before something like a 50 mile or something. I can't remember what the distance was, and had not done well. I think he dropped after 10 miles, 15 miles, something like that. But actually got in Laz into ARFTA. Laz allowed him in, but told him, Stu, if you die on the course, the other runners are going to have to run around your body. And so Laz has this, I want to leave it to readers on this part as to how Laz can say something like that. You have to be around him, and also I think know a bit of his history and what he went through with a tumor that was found when he was 12 years old, inching towards his brain. But he has a certain detachment or a way of dealing with death. Also, his time as an orderly in a hospital, where he was dealing with taking bodies to the morgue on a regular basis, where he has this different way of dealing with death. And so he makes this comment to Stu. And then the relationship that they had, Stu goes, you're right. It would be a pretty selfish thing of me to do. So that is an anecdote off to itself. But the fact is that Stu then went and ran 110 miles, went home, and died that night.
Hmm.
The will, the power of the will in its various forms is something that when Laz was an orderly at Baptist Memorial in Memphis, and this is from the in between the years of when he was a college dropout and then before the years that he started creating races. So I thought it was a really crucial time in his life. And it took a long time to dig into that with him. But the time that he spent dealing with the older people, seeing willpower get people on their feet when they had no business ever walking again. And then also on the flip side of that coin, making cripples out of people that should easily heal up. But they were looking for an excuse, letting a lot of people hover over them, maybe looking for a way to check that disability box. And it was remarkable. And it was also unfair because both types died and he had to take both types to the morgue. But that time, I feel, was very informative to what he would later do with his races, about what he wanted to get at in the human psyche. And Stu Gleeman is a perfect example of that. He was dedicated to the Barkley. He was the first donator to the Barkley Fund. He's never had a sponsor, Laz, for the Barkley. To keep it going, he's needed, some of the regulars to chip in, create a fund to allow to rent certain things and to rent the parking lot, get the chickens. Laz is very much a DIY race creator. This guy is not an organization. He was an accountant who was taking his spare time to put on these events. So Stu is someone that it seemed like every interview I did, his name came up.
Mm.
Great man.
Very good. Very good. Jared Beasley, thank you very much for joining us and letting us know about your book, The Endurance Artist, Lazarus Lake, The Barkley, and A Race with No End.
And I'm serious. It's going to be on the finals, so read it, people. Everybody.
Very good.
If you don't know Laz's birthday, you're going to have to read the book. It's going to be on the final. These are important questions.
You got to read all the pages, right?
All the pages.
All
That's
the
right.
pages, because you don't know which page is yours, right? With this podcast. So,
yeah.
But I have an idea. So if you can call, you know what, send us a note and let us know what page number yours is. And if we feel that you named the right one, Fred and I will award you a book. Okay.
There you go.
Do that. That's the contest. And you had to listen to the end for this shit, right? So thanks again, Jared. And thank you, Fred, for joining tonight. To all of our listeners, thank you for listening. And if you've made it this far, of course, seek professional help. And we will see you all in a mile
and a half.
All right. All right.
I feel like we could have talked for 5 hours.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah. We didn't even talk about drugs.
How did that happen? That's just implied, Jared. That's like, I have to ask you though, the pictures that you have in the back behind you. It looks like there's some running there and some history. Maybe what's going on there?
So this is a half and half deal. This side over here is my wife stuff. Mm-hmm. And this side over here, people that I've written about or want to write about or that I'm inspired by. So at the top of there, the man you can see raising his arms, that's a meal.
Okay. Yeah.
That's my neighbor that got me started in all this.
Yes.
So he didn't even know that picture existed. I found it on eBay by a photographer. That's him finishing up his 1,000-mile race around Texas, where he was the only one that hadn't quit. Even the race directors quit. And he had told me this story for years and years and years about the Battleship Texas. And then I found this photo maybe 5 years ago, and there's the Battleship Texas. Down here with the runner, that's Al Howie. Herman Melville.
Yes. Because I was like, I know that guy. I just don't know where I've seen it. There she blows. So
yeah, Melville is a big part of my life.
Yeah.
The color picture is Emil also with the Tarahumara down in the Copper
Canyons. Yeah.
And a funny story. This is an anecdote that very rarely I get a chance to bring up. When I was at the 2023, and this is not even in the book, in the 2023 Backyard Ultra, when I was there was a Tarahumara runner there, a Raramuri runner. It was amazing to see. It was amazing to see him drop and and see Harvey keep going. Well, he stayed around. The mother of another Mexican runner, she was everybody's cheerleader. So her son stayed after he dropped, and the Tarahumara person stayed as well. He couldn't speak much English. He couldn't speak much Spanish. And I thought about this picture that I had, and I wanted to tell him this story, and I couldn't communicate it to him. So I got my computer, my little laptop I had at the fire pit. I found the picture, and I brought it to him. He started to cry. He said, "That's my grandfather."
Oh my gosh.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is something. Wow. That's
I never
crazy.
get to tell that. You never get deep enough and twisted enough and around the noodle to get back to that.
Yeah. That's the beauty of a long run, is that when you're out on it, like, how often do you get to spend X amount of hours just talking to people, right? Like, and being able to get into it. And podcasts are kind of the same, in the same neighborhood, at least, where we get a chance where, we're not sitting here on our phones, and we're not, there's nothing else, it's just this right now. So, I appreciate the time you spent with us, and, and our listeners definitely will too. So
my pleasure.